AI is putting a lot of tech jobs at risk, or really is it? We're going to be looking at some data to really help us come up with that conclusion. The first thing I'm going to show you is the number of tech layoffs. As we know, May was a very brutal month, 56,000 according to this chart here. And in September, it's down to 7%, nearly 90% down from where it peaked at in May. So we see that it's stabilizing and it's being reduced quite a bit. Now let's look at some other data. Unemployment rates, we know during COVID, around May of 2020, it peaked at 14%. It was crazy, right? To now where we are a little bit under 3%. This light blue chart that you're seeing here, the last number is as of July 2023. Tech layoffs were at 4% during COVID, right? Peak of COVID. And now it's about half in terms of unemployment. So it's not as bad. So if unemployment is down for tech, why does it seem like the industry is getting battered quite a bit? As we see, tech employment has risen from August of 2021, which is 2 years ago when COVID was a bit stabilizing. We're still unsure, and this whole hybrid model started being incorporated a bit, but remote was probably a bigger thing at that point. And where we are now in August of 2023, about 2 years later. And the last thing I'm going to show you is we can see here, IT, custom softwares in the tech center, August compared to July, there has been an increase of 10,000 roles of employment, right? This is not unemployment, this is employment. But we see that software developers has declined by 1,000 people. Project management, 1,000 people, negative, right? Everything across some of these tech postings have declined in terms of jobs that are available. But employment overall for the entire industry has risen from July to August. So what does all this mean? I want to take a look at lens for this from a UX perspective, because that is the field where I'm much more catered inside of. I'm more embedded in. I know what's going on. It's brutal. Like one job posting on LinkedIn, you'll have like 500 people apply to it in like 2 days, which is insane. Like, do you have a fair shot? A lot of confidence could be thrown out the window when you're looking at these numbers, right? You see that, you're like, man, I don't really stand a chance. But I'm going to tell you right now, be persistent. Over the past few weeks, I've gotten more hit-ups on LinkedIn. During 2022, summer, actually from like, I would say January up until summer, I was getting hit-ups by recruiters every single day. You have to be very diligent about who you give a shot to, because at that time, people were just throwing money. And they weren't throwing money that makes you want to move. They were just throwing money because they had money to spend. Interest rates were down. Lending allowed them to have much more power to be able to borrow, and then that's what they were hiring you off of, based upon their borrowing power. They weren't using the cash reserves to hire you, except I think if you were essential in that sense. That's the only time where they have to account for all that stuff. But all this excess of borrowing that they were doing, so that they were able to leverage that to reduce their tax burden. In other words, they had to hire more. They had to spend the money that they were borrowing to offset their capital gains and all this such. And that's what it is. It created a false interpretation of where the market was for a lot of these companies. And if you fell for it, you paid the consequences. And unfortunately, some of us that even did not fall for it or still had to pay the consequences and face these layoffs. But it really comes boiled down to it, right? You have to be very careful on the companies you choose to. Stick to your numbers. Like right now, I know in my field, 300,000 is more of where we're peaking right now at this point. 350, some of us could be leveraging. And this is me at a senior principal level inside of my field. If you are more in the managerial side, you probably could seek like 400,000 to 500,000. And this could be total compensation. From an hourly perspective, right? You got to do the math on that sense. For me, 200 is right now is that number on an hourly basis. So you have to be very careful. If companies aren't willing to step up to the plate and be like, yes, we're going to pay you this much, then the lack of confidence in you being there, it doesn't seem essential, because they're trying to pay everything that they're paying everybody else. And that's how you got to look at it and be very careful when it comes to giving another company another shot and then moving from one place to another. So where are we right now? Bad news for 2023, UX salaries are down 11%. That is true. I've been pretty much flat, but I have increased, I could say, from total overall, because half of last year I was at a lower rate, and then the end of last year I got a higher rate, and I'm still at that same rate. As much as I'm pushing for it, they're trying to be a little bit not capable, right? They seem to want to freeze things and such, which is all right. You got to do other things in other areas. We got to be grateful, thanks to God, that we have the opportunity to still have some form of employment. Job openings for UX researchers was down 73% from 2022 to 2023. Like, companies were posting like crazy. Like, I need UX for this. Really, essentially, some of these things that I'm looking at, I'm like, man, after 6 months, I don't really see the future of your products. Once I build all this UX for you, go through all this usability testing, do this research, and build out the design, after 6 months, I don't see what else I can really provide for you that will be essential for your company to run. And if you can't answer that question and don't see that, that's probably not the company that you want to be at. UX designers was down 71% from 2022 to 2023. Thousands of UX professionals have been laid off. We know that, right? And this is not across just UX, but software engineers, data scientists. This is for everything. The numbers are pretty relative in that sense. But look at this, right? Even though 73% of UX researchers have been laid off compared to 2022, 53% higher than the number for 2018. This is really like investing in the stock market, right? If you look at a stock over a 5-year span, you'll see that it has increased. Or even in any index fund over a 5-year span, you'll see that it has increased over a certain amount of time. And it could be like 50%, just like we're seeing here. From 2018 to 2023, 53% higher, right, of increase in UX hirings and openings that are happening. But if you're comparing it for last year's numbers, it's always going to look horrible. It's going to look pretty bad. So there is growth in the industry. There is growth. It's stabilizing. Just like with stocks, when we seen in 2021, stocks were being bought like crazy. It overvalued companies. And then now in 2022, end of 2022 to 2023, it stabilized a lot much more. And there things are getting back much more to a normal price. And people are running scared. Is it going to get back that high? It sure has to, because of all the printing of money that has happened. Like, all this cash cannot be sitting around. We see that people are running out of cash. As real estate, a lot of people were doing cash deals. Real estate, people are spending less cash. The number of savings that were inside of the U.S. economy, people saving in their accounts, was about $4 trillion to now it's like $200 billion, which is crazy, right? And it's only going to keep depleting. The more people got to tap into their cash savings and all this stuff, to the point where they can't no more. And then this is one of the things that might spark a further recession. I really think we are still in a recession. It's just not at its high intensity peak point yet. I think we're going to get there, but it's just not there yet. The good news for not just UX, but all fields, with the introduction of AI, just like any new technology, you have to learn to use and leverage it in order for you to work faster, smarter, quicker, be more productive in your outputs, right? Using it. Example for me, I did a research, I interviewed so many people, 10 different like research reports I summarized, fed it to ChatGPT, and then it outputted a result set for me. I did do an analysis ahead of time because I wanted to make sure that I'm not influenced by its results. So I did my own analysis to see what output I wanted to do. But leveraging it, there are some insights that it provided me that I did not think about. But at the same time, there are things I thought about, it did not think about. But using both of them together, we now have two outputs that is much more powerful, because it missed some things, I missed some things, but together we are much better. It's kind of like having two of you in a sense, right? Leveraging it to work faster. I think for me, on the design perspective, the way I can get it is once I start telling it, color this blue, make this, shift this to the left, make sure this is 12 pixels to the right, balance on each side. The minute that designs can get to that point, I think we're going to work so much faster, because there are a lot of tasks that could be tedious. Like if I tell it, draw me a table, these are the columns, fill me some lorem ipsum data, bam, I can get a table in less than 5 minutes. That would save me hours and hours, because right now, how I have to do it is I use InDesign, I put some dummy data, and then I have an offshore team that has to translate it for me in Figma. That is a lot of their time. Sometimes I could take a couple of hours. Versus if I can tell it, give me this table output ASAP, and I can talk to it, leveraging AI to do that, pretty powerful, right? That's one example of where I think a future innovation could potentially come from with Figma. So against the tech sector, AI is pretty much here to stay. I don't think it's going anywhere. Any disruption in technology for us to be able to do things, just like programming. Back then, they had to use Fortran and zeros and ones, but now we can actually say words and have functions, use libraries, right? Developers are able to work much more faster in that sense. And some of them are actually using AI to simulate some code. So that way they're not doing things from a blank standpoint. So those are the very much powerful things I feel like AI is going to help. And we have to learn to adapt to it and not just simply skip it like, oh yeah, it's just another thing. It's another phase that might die out. I don't see it that way. I think the people that are really going to survive in this tech industry are the people that can leverage it, as well as virtual reality. We've seen that virtual reality has a potential to really make doctors' lives much more better. They can look at things, do certain analysis, and it might even impact my field as well. As I'm designing, I could have several screens. Like, I'm looking forward to the Apple Vision Pro, where I can like kind of mirror my screen here and there and have like 4 screens, but it's inside of this goggle, and I can design that way. But then again, that's me being hopeful. I don't know how it works yet. Haven't had the opportunity to really touch the device. Don't be scared. Don't be afraid. AI is going to be here to say we have to really learn to adapt to it. A lot of things. This article right here is a friend of mine that really shared this to me. I really see this as an opportunity for us to really partner with this technology and evolve, because we're going to be able to make things that we probably wouldn't even be able to think of at a speed which we didn't think was imaginable, right? So tech sector, it will stabilize. I think there will be a growth again of jobs as companies are going to compete with each other. Somebody's going to spark it, right? It's the same way when you have stock sell-offs. At some point, someone start to spark the buying, and once that starts, it goes for a long time. And the same thing is going to happen in the tech sector and when it comes to hiring and such as technology evolves. So I hope you found this insightful. If you have any questions for me, again, don't be afraid. Don't be scared. Like, really stay encouraged. It may be tougher out there right now. A lot of applicants per single job. I know it's not easy, and it seems like it's never going to end, but remain hopeful. January is typically a much bigger hiring month. I would say from December, because companies start preparing for their hiring from December. They know what their numbers look like. But I'll say from January till about March, you should see a tick up in hiring. But depending on where the economy is, we're not sure, because it also is dependent upon borrowing power of companies as they feel more comfortable when they can borrow more money in order for them to hire employees. It creates this whole tax economy effect for them. So peace and love. Like, share, subscribe. If you have any comments, drop it in comments below for any questions that you may have. Peace and love. Trust in Jesus. Have an amazing one. Hustle, 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 stay.